you?
I'm Jen Bosworth Ramirez.
And I'm Gina Polici.
We went to theater school together. We survived it, but we didn't quite understand it.
20 years later, we're digging deep, talking to our guests about their experiences and trying to make sense of it all.
We survived theater school, and you will too. Are we famous yet?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I've been walking a lot. I'm on this new sort of health journey. It's interesting. We're supposed to be, look, if we lived in a society that was equal, and which we know we don't, we're supposed to be spending a lot more money on food than we spend, groceries, in as people, and less money on garbage food, right?
Yeah.
But you must know this as having a family, a bigger family than I do. Like, a lot of money gets spent on food, especially if you buy healthy foods. Oh my manaja. I was like at the Whole Foods, and I literally bought like not a lot of stuff, and it was like $132. And I was like, what? I literally feel like I just bought sweet potatoes. How is this $132? But I'm doing it because, I'm fortunate enough to have the dough, and that's what I'm supposed to be spending it on right now. And so when you don't buy crap and you don't eat out at fast food restaurants, I wasn't like a fast food junkie, but we ate out at like
Amazon.
fast food. Like we would eat at Jack in the Box every couple weeks, or like in LA, or like here. Not so much here, but yeah, there. So I cut all that out, the junk food part, the fast food part,
it's
and spending it on groceries now. So it's just a weird shift of where the finances go, which feels good in a way. I mean, look,
leads
it's better
me to
to spend.
I'd
rather
what
support,
I wanted to run by you, which is that I've been thinking today about.
I guess I'd rather support Amazon than McDonald's, I suppose.
Like if in the nature
really, they're all owned
argument,
by the same
you're
person.
Really trying
probably.
to distill or tease apart what is your nature.
Hey, let me run this by you.
Who you came into this world being, and the only way I know to get any glimpse of it is like when you do something one way for a very long time, and then for whatever reason you're exposed to doing it a different way, and you're like, oh, this makes so much more sense. Like, this other way I was doing it never quite worked, but I never questioned it because that's just how things were done. Right. So that's one way I know to understand what your essential nature is. But it's so difficult to tease apart your essential nature from how you were raised and everything that I just was wondering, like, who would I be? And what made me think about it is I was listening to an interview with Fran Lebowitz, who I think is so great. And, she was on Fresh Air. And so Terry Gross is asking her, have you been lonely during, in these 10 months? And actually she's been in her apartment even longer than that, because there was a different reason she hadn't left her, or maybe she'd left her apartment, but she hadn't left New York since maybe like February. And she said, no, I'm never, ever lonely. I keep myself company just fine. And she's a writer. And so basically she fills her time with reading and writing, and she doesn't have a computer or a cell phone. So she still communicates with people by landline. And I thought, okay, there's a universe in which that is me. There's a universe in which I am completely content by myself, reading and writing, and not like being so involved with all the stuff in life that I feel sometimes really brings me down. Now, that's not to say like I made the wrong choices, or it's just to say like I can imagine a version of me that's that.
Interesting. I could see you. I could totally see that. There is a version of me that is like that for like 3 days. So So there isn't really a version of me like that, but I could see you totally doing that. The other person that comes to mind that has that similar vibe is Jack White. Doesn't have a cell phone, doesn't have, he's just he's a weirdo, but he also, is the kind of person who is never like, they asked him the similar thing. Like, don't you miss feeling connected? He said, no, I feel most connected when I'm just at home making my music in my, $1 million mansion, whatever. But similar thing, like he doesn't feel, some people don't need, some people just don't need that. And I think you're right. That's in their nature. Their nature
I don't see you
that's similar
being
people who live off the land kind of folks.
Alone.
You're
And
like,
I think you
they just
are
have a different
essentially an
wavelength
extrovert.
of
I think
being.
you get your
I feel like I
lot of
somewhere in
energy
between.
from other people.
But I also feel like,
But,
and this comes
so
back to
then I
theater
was trying to
school,
imagine
like knowing
who
yourself
you
or not
would be
knowing
if
yourself.
you,
Like, I feel like I
didn't
haven't
have
really
any
discovered that yet. Like, I could be
whatever.
that person.
Something that could never be.
I don't know what my
Nobody
true,
can live
my true
life without
nature
hang-ups,
is.
And I see you just being like a really carefree, fun-loving, spontaneous, just like lightning in a bottle type person. And and maybe you'd be like running a yoga commune in, San Ysidro Valley. Right?
Oh. Yeah. I think that's probably true. Oh. Oh, that actually sounds great. That sounds great. Yeah, I agree. I totally could get down with that. But I see you, I totally could see you as the Fran Lebowitz type, because I think you said this too on this podcast, is that in your nature, you're not so much searching for like fame and acceptance as much as personal power, like personal ownership. And I think that's something that when I see Fran Lebowitz, I think that she's got that up the wazoo. She does not give a shit what you say. I mean, like, she just does it. So and there are other people like him. He has a way of making you think, and a lot of people do, some people do this, that he is the one exception to every rule. Whether it's white dude rule, whether it's young person rule, whether it's hipster rule, he is going to be the exception to the rule across all.
You must. And I sent you my HBO login.
People buy into that. And they're like, yeah, but he's really this and that and the other. No, dude, he's a white dude that got by on privilege.
I'm not going to tell you must watch it.
Was discovered and is talented. I would say talented.
One of the billion things I love about this television series.
Whatever.
I love this television series is one of the main
but everyone tells me to watch it.
Is what you're
describing.
Just so
brilliant.
He's the billionaire who considers himself not a spoiled little boy, and there's all these scenes of him like he's a white guy listening to hip hop and buying cool sneakers and just thinking the world of himself, and this actor plays him so perfectly. That's a whole type. That's a whole, I'm not a regular guy, I'm a blah blah guy. And it's always, whenever somebody's saying that, it's like that, no, you are the regular guy. You are the person you think you're not. Exactly. They need to have a word that's like humble brag, but it's like for the flexapology.
Right. And I think that could be said about this person we're talking about. You are the thing that you think you aren't. And The way I know that is that you keep apologizing in your own way for being the thing that you think you are.
I think of him as a child star, really.
Oh, when he showed up at the theater school, everybody was like,
so gross.
It's so gross. So you may know him from Running on Empty with River Phoenix. He was the River Phoenix's little brother, but he also was in a bunch of plays and was discovered. He did do Broadway, and now he's an amazing English public school teacher in Brooklyn.
Yeah,
very exciting.
He's a great example of how not everybody who went to theater school finds success in the same thing. I mean, he absolutely found success. He loves his life. He says that 50 times. He loves what he does, and I don't think I think he is grateful to the theater school for
So we're so excited to have Jonas Abry. Let's get it on.
Let's get it on.
Oh.
You survived theater school. Congratulations.
Well, kind of. I mean, I guess, yeah, I did. I did survive theater school. 2 theater schools, actually, for that matter. And
plot twist. I didn't know about this.
Yeah, I got cut. I got cut after second year from DePaul. So I went to NYU. I had a manager at the time who got me an interview at NYU after interviews were supposedly done. I did my audition. I got in. I finished pretty much on time with at Tisch, School of the Arts. But so I was class of 97. But yeah.
You might have lucked out then.
I think you lucked out.
It all worked out. Everything that I hoped. I mean, I keep thinking about all of the obstacles that I've gone through, and in the giant scheme of things, these are not real obstacles. In this world that we live in. But I was never homeless. I never had to deal with real suffering. More pride than anything else. But going through I'm in a spot now where I don't think I could be happier. When all is said and done, I'm in a. I mean, I minus the COVID. That would be nice. Yeah. But the job I have, I love. I'm married with 2 wonderful kids. I love my wife. I love my life. It's a good thing.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, what I was referring to a little bit tongue in cheek is just that you're the first person we're talking to who can give us the real scoop about something other than the theater school, because we all have only had the same experience. So we've been told that some of the stuff that happened at DePaul did not happen at other theater schools. Maybe yes, maybe no.
So I can tell you just a little bit the boundary issues that we kind of saw with teachers and students and the kind of feedback we got. And was it the same? What was your experience like at NYU in terms of the difference between maybe the theater school at DePaul and the theater school at Tisch?
Okay, so it's been so long. I think for me, and this is one of the elements where I didn't have to worry about being cut at NYU. And so going into NYU and knowing that I was graduating, as long as my GPA was good, I was graduating when I'm supposed to graduate in 1997. So it was going to be fine. With NYU, the pressure, that was always the big thing for me is that the pressure of having someone, we might have sounds from my children coming from another room. Just
it's okay.
The pressure of possibly being told, and I remember getting the list that first year of it was like your notes, your feedback, and it was like if you had 1 or 2, you were safe, but if you had 17, you might as well just call the moving company because you're not staying. And I remember the first year I was fine. And then the second year I had a bunch. And I went and I remember speaking to Rick Murphy and a bunch of people and going through. And they all gave me 17 different pieces of feedback that were not really. And so for a person who can very easily live inside his head, this made it that much more pressurized. And I think that kind of stuck with me. I mean, as a child actor, I was dealing with rejection, but it wasn't rejection in the fact that it was fun, right? I was still just a kid. I was going to auditions on the side. It was an adventure. I was living in Westchester County, and my mom and I would jump on a Metro North train and go into the city and hang out and probably go to get a hot dog, a Sabrett's hot dog or something. And, we just have a hot pretzel, just do all these fun things that as a kid, you're like, I'm in New York City. It was great. And so when I booked something, it was fantastic. There were a couple of times where I didn't book something that I thought I was really close on, and that was kind of disappointing. But as I got older, the pressure just started, and, that kind of feeling that it wasn't about having fun anymore. It was about making sure that I would stay with my friends, with you guys, with everybody who lived with me in that apartment, with Eric and Dan, and have the fun and just really have that college experience. And then next thing you know, they're like, yeah, well, bye. And I'm on a plane back to New York. And I remember, my dad was like trying to get me back in. And I was like, Dad, they don't want me. And I don't want to be that guy who's like, please take me back. So luckily everything worked out with the NYU. And my best friend from high school was there. We became roommates immediately. Charlie. Yes. You remember Charlie? Charlie became my roommate, and we found an apartment first on 14th Street, then on 28th Street in Murray Hill. And he graduated a year before I did, but we had a great time, and it was relaxing, and I was able to enjoy school, other than the fact that I did miss the campus of DePaul. There was no campus at NYU. There's Washington Square Park, which is great if people want to sell you drugs, but it's not really it's not a campus. It's you don't get to just sit around and see other people from school.
Yeah, that was an advantage of DePaul. So I'm wondering, like, maybe it was the fact that you really learned how to act for film. Do you think that was the issue about theater school?
I don't know. I mean, I started off in the theater. I mean, that's my first big break was first big break. I had one big break, two maybe. Was Costal Disturbances that actually is having a reunion in the next couple of days, which is
so cool.
That's so cool.
And it's funny because it was 2 days after Annette Benning, personal assistant, reached out to me that Jen reached out to me, and then suddenly I was. And Gina, you became my friend on Facebook like instantaneously, and it was just like now I actually have closure, and yet because for me with acting, that pressure of trying to please everyone in the audition, please everyone, please my teacher, right? It stopped. It became more of trying to make the powers that be like what I'm doing. And it wasn't healthy. And so, I didn't really take on acting after that. I was an actor. I had an agent a little bit. I had a voiceover agent, and I was trying to get stuff, but, I ran into some real issues there. And then one day, I was on real thin ice with my voiceover agent. It was 2004. They called me in for an audition they said it was for the Democratic Party. I'm like, okay, I'm a Democrat. I'll definitely go in and do an audition and whatever. But it turns out it was for Joe Lieberman, who at that time had left the party to become an independent because of the war. And I sat there and I thought to myself, you know what? This is it. This is my moment. This is where I'm going to say I'm going to sell out, or I'm going to stand by my morals and do this. And I said, I'm not doing it. I'm sorry. And I walked out, and basically I had the job. If I wanted it, I was going to do it. And I called the agency up and I said, I'm sorry, you said it was the Democratic Party. It wasn't. It was Joe Lieberman, and I can't do this. And I walked away, and I never heard from the agency again. And that was that. And so, it was this. I love the idea. It's that moment of what would you do in this situation? Would you take the moral high ground, or would you take the money? And like everyone's like, I'd take the moral high ground, and I basically ended my acting career in doing so. So
I want to just bring up that something that always stuck out for me about you in our college experience and after is that was sort of something that I always thought you did, was take the moral high ground. Like, I remember you in class and stuff saying if something wasn't right or if something didn't sit with you, you called it. You said something. And I always thought that was the coolest thing because, and Gina and I talk about how, I'll just say for me, my head was so far up my ass, I had no idea what was going on. But you seemed to know. You had like this groundedness about you that like you called. So I think this is a theme for you, like from outside looking in.
I mean, I'd love to say that is the way I would look at it too. I think there was a certain amount of, I was putting on a bit of airs. There's a Vonnegut quotation from Mother Night. You are what you pretend to be. So you got to be careful what you pretend to be. And I knew what I wanted to be. And I think that there were parts of me that, like when I was wearing the fedora and smoking the pipe and wearing the black.
Oh, the pipe!
That's right.
There was a certain amount of play.
Yeah, it was like play acting.
It was. I mean, I remember someone said it to me in high school, right near the end. Is like. It might have been Charlie. I don't remember who said it because he was a year ahead of me. So he was in college. He was at NYU in '92. But this idea that when you go to college, you can remake yourself into anything you want. And I did. And I feel like I did for about a year. That's when the fedora and the pipe and then I started inhaling the pipe, and I went to a tobacconist and said, how bad is that? And he said, you might as well be smoking 2 packs of cigarettes. So of course I switched to cigarettes, and then because everybody was smoking, we go into what was the name of the place where we played pool and video games and ate and
oh yeah, one of the dining hall, whatever that was called.
And so everyone else was smoking, so I started smoking, and it was 10 years of 2.5 packs a day. So it was just,
oh God.
Yeah.
You quit, right? You quit.
March 23rd, 2003.
Congratulations.
Good for you. So how did acting start? I mean, you were obviously very young when you started. How did that whole process begin?
So my dad was a real estate broker in Westchester, and in Elmsford, New York, they were building a dinner theater. And the dinner theater was called, oh my God, it eventually became called, it was called an evening dinner theater. And then it became the Westchester Broadway Theatre. And they were doing these children's shows. And I'm sorry, I have to even go back further. I went to a Montessori school for elementary.
Awesome. I'm jealous.
So we had a principal, Mrs. Friedman. And Mrs. Friedman had made sure that we did hour-long plays every year. And I was in kindergarten, I did The Wizard of Oz and I played the Scarecrow. And I was like, and it's weird. I'm not thinking a lot about everything just because of mortality right now with COVID. I remember at 5 going and taking a sip and highlighting the lines I had as the Scarecrow. I was so excited. And I sang If You Only Had a Brain, and I did the whole thing. And then the next year we did Peter Pan, and I played Peter, and then, and we did the whole thing. And then the next year I was it couldn't be done anymore, but I was the King of Siam and the King and I, this blonde-haired, blue-eyed, yeah. So,
but you had stage, but it must have been because you had presence. You had stage presence.
Yeah, I loved going up on the stage, and so who knows, past life maybe, I don't know. But at the same time, it was this whole this idea of acting. And so when the dinner theater came up, there was talk that they wanted to do children's shows, and so I was doing like the Wizard of Oz, but instead of playing the Scarecrow, I was obviously playing a Munchkin. And then we did Mary Poppins, and I played Michael Banks, and then we just did all these different shows, and I kept playing all these roles. And one of the kids in one of the shows had a manager, and the manager came and said, I'd love for you to come. And next thing you know, I was auditioning for commercials and little things here and there. And then my big break was Coastal Disturbances, which, and, after that I made a couple of movies. And then we decided I wanted to be a kid. They decided, and I decided I want to be a kid. So.
Go ahead, Buzz.
I was just going to say, how old were you when you booked Costal Disturbances?
I was 11.
11. So you were 11. And was that off Broadway or Broadway?
It was off Broadway first. It was at second stage. But it got a tremendous review from Frank Rich at the time. A lot because of Annette and Tim. And suddenly everyone and their mother was coming to the show. So coming backstage, I got to meet Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward. Whenever people were like, who's the most famous person you've met? I'm like, I'm going to win.
Yeah, you really are.
Then, after it was only supposed to be like a 2 or 3 month run. They closed, but there was still the demand. So the artistic directors, Carol Roth and Robin Goodman, went out to sell the show. And we ended up getting booked at Circle in the Square on Broadway. And, then I was with the show from, it opened, I want to say it was on Valentine's Day of 1987. And then I left in September to go do Running on Empty. And then I was done. I went, I think a year later, I did a small role in a movie called Slaves of New York. But after that, I was just like, I was burnt out. I was done. I was having trouble with kids because, 12 is a tough age. And there was some bullying around that. So it was not easy. And I think a lot of those issues came into my life when it came to trying to please people. And with mixing that with Paul saying you have to earn your spot to stay the next year. It's not like you're getting kicked out for plagiarism. You're getting kicked out because they don't think that you have to count.
Right. So, but how did you pick DePaul? Did you apply to a bunch of places?
I did. I applied. I'm trying to remember. I wanted to be in a city. So I didn't apply to NYU because I wanted to get out of New York, in the fact that I had felt that I was going to return to New York no matter what, and I wanted to live somewhere else. And oh God, I'm going to try and remember everybody who was there. So I got into Boston University, and I was sure I was going to go there because the person in the audition, after my audition, they told me on the spot I had a spot. And then they said, we're going to send information for you scholarship-wise on the way, because there was no way I could afford BU on my own. And it never came. So
they shined you on?
Yeah, it was just a little sad thing. The funny thing is that I ended up going to NYU, which was even more expensive than Boston University. But it was at that time. But the thing was, we booked tickets to go to Chicago to check out DePaul, and I remember I went and I talked to some of the professors, and I went and saw a studio production in one of the classrooms. I want to say the name of the piece was The Robe, and I remember Dorcas blew my mind in that piece. And I actually went home, and I had been really depressed about BU because I was sure that was where I was going. I was telling everybody at school, I'm going to Boston University. But we went back to the hotel room, and I went, this is it. This is where I want to go. If this is the type of work, and like they took me to the Goodman, and not the Goodman, the what's the theater? What's the theater?
Merle Ruskin.
Thank you. And so I was like, I'll have a real stage, and it was amazing. I was so excited, and I was sold. And so,
did Dorcas ever know that she was that influential? She passed away, right?
Did she?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, of cancer, I believe, a couple of years back. Yeah. I'm sorry. I thought you guys knew. I know this is like one of those things where it's like, yeah, she passed away. But did she know how influential?
Yeah. So I was adopted by the girls who were doing For Color Girls by Ntozake Shange at the theater. And so like I basically became their errand boy, and they would send me around to do things for them. But like I don't know, I loved it. And that was 18-year-old kid who was like, all the girls are being nice.
Oh, that's so cute. So do you remember what shows you did in your first, I guess we didn't do a show in our first year maybe, but what show did you do in second year?
Oh, gosh. I know we did Police Story.
I was in that with you. That's right. I was the shoplifter. And you were the
shoplifter. Lee Grant in the movie. And I was the detective. Tate was the detective.
Who directed that?
Bill Conti? No, something Conti.
Mitch Conti?
Mitch Conti?
Lou Conti.
Lou Conti. And I ended up getting a part. I ended up not doing another studio. I ended up getting a part in an actual big show. I cannot remember the professor's name. Older professor. He taught later on.
Osselhoff?
It wasn't Hostel Prof, as I remember him being.
That's the best name. I've never heard that. Hostel Prof. Was it Joe Slowick?
Yes, it was Slowick. And so like I had like 2 or 3 lines, and it was fine. It was a nothing thing. It was the fifth horse.
Oh yeah.
And I played a servant, and I came on and said 1 or 2 lines, but it was my credit for that, and it was fine. It was nothing. They needed somebody to play, and they wanted him to look young, and I was already from when I started smoking, I had already lost. I was 127 pounds, so I was this weight, and so I looked young and thin and probably a little sickly, which was perfect because I was playing. I was a serf, actually. I was a Russian serf, so it was fine.
What about at NYU? What shows did you do there?
We didn't really. So there were issues with actually doing. They didn't. I got put in the Meisner Studio, which the professor of the Meisner Studio. It was having real issues with the administration of the school, and she had issues, a lot of issues. But she would start to say we're going to do a show, and then we would never do it. And then I ended up doing Hurly Burly, which was great, which was a lot of fun. But we were like supposed to do is it Rumors? Is that the one by Neil Simon?
Yeah.
And because like 2 kids didn't memorize their lines on time, she canceled the whole thing. And like all the parents caused this big stink, and she ended up losing her job. It was this whole enormous.
So would you say that the theater school was not alone in its share of political weirdness? The theater school at DePaul. So NYU sounds like it had its own weirdness.
Oh, I definitely had issues with NYU. I mean, one of the things is that we were told one of the benefits of NYU was that at the end of your senior year, you would do a scene, and they would have agents there, and agents would be able to look at you and see whatever, and you audition for it. And a bunch of us were told like, no, we're not using yours. We're not using yours. When they told us originally, everyone was going to get a spot, or at least that's how it had been in the past. And so, it was, and so again, that pressure came back on you. Like you have to audition to get an audition for an agent. So it became this real.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so they're always, I guess they were trying to prep you for the rejection that you're possibly going to experience, but
Well, here's my problem with that is that I get that, and also we're still in school, so we're still students, so we're learning. And now, as I'm in school, right, I'm getting an MFA right now in television and screenwriting, and I have to thank you. He gave a thumbs up. I have to remember, like, wait. And I'm looking back at my guests and stuff for podcasts. We were students. We were young people, students learning. We weren't in the real world, and that's why we were in school, to not be in the real world.
Right.
So.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Gina.
I was going to say, the whole thing about doing shows at DePaul was very prescribed. Like everybody does a show per term, either workshop or main stage. It sounds like it wasn't like that at Tisch.
No, not even slightly. I mean, Tisch was there are so many different studios at Tisch that you could go to. So you could go to the Meisner, which I don't know what ended up happening with Meisner. Sorry, I live on the first floor, so there are kids like running through the streets.
Okay.
there was Cap 21, Cap 27, I want to say, which was the musical theater area, which is, I think, where Lady Gaga went. There's
the Atlantic, the David Mamet studio. Right. There was, I don't think Meisner exists anymore.
Oh, she was fired the year that I graduated, so I don't know. I didn't keep touch with many of my friends from NYU, other than Charlie. But and actually my best man I actually met the day before we were graduating. He was my roommate's boyfriend, so it was just this weird sort of coincidence. Anyway, but the thing, so I ended up going to, because all of my credits didn't transfer, I needed one more acting credit to graduate. So that summer I went to, oh my God, what's her name? She was a member of and now I'm completely blanking out. An old person moment. She was a member of the group theater. She was American, but sounded like she was British because she.
Tina Landau or Anyway, I don't.
It'll come to you later.
Yeah.
Like Strasberg, she had her own school of acting that starts with an A. Stella Adler.
Okay. Stella Adler.
I did go to. I did take classes at HB for a while, but I felt like I was just going through the motions at that point. But anyway, I did a thing at Stella Adler, which was great, actually. I really had a good time. We did some Shakespeare, which is why I did it, because I love doing Shakespeare. And we didn't do full plays, but we did scenes. And it was a lot of fun. I had a really good time. But yeah, there wasn't any pressure. It was just, for that anyway, it was just, let's do the show. And then I graduated.
Did you do a showcase at the end?
Yeah, we did a showcase of our scenes, and I did the Richard III, Queen Elizabeth scene, which was just such a juicy.
It's a great scene.
Yeah, it was just so much fun, and that's what I think back on when I think about like acting, and then going on auditions and hating every moment of it, of having to sell myself again, having to showcase why do you want me? Why do you need me?
Right,
I'm the right person for this show. When every actor would say, no, that's not what you do. You have to just be the moment, and they will see that.
I mean, I think that's one, easier said than done, and two, for people that are, I would like to say, sort of emotionally astute beings, it's really weird to be like, oh, just be in the moment, but also do a good job, and also remember your lines, but just relax. I mean, it's asking a lot of any human, especially a younger human. And I'm just fascinated by the fact that you keep saying, like, it was fun to you. And when it stopped being fun was when it sounds like you were like, nope, time to pivot, time to pivot. And I'm interested in how you pivoted to teaching.
So it wasn't a direct pivot. It was, I knew that the voiceover thing was going away. I wasn't getting calls. I was working at a restaurant. I was taking reservations. I wasn't even working as a waiter. I was taking reservations. I was pretty miserable all the way around. I mean, I just met my to-be wife, and we were living with each other in the Upper West Side. And I remember thinking, okay, I'm going to become a psychologist. My best friend, who I mentioned earlier, who I met right before NYU, he was an actor. He actually went way. He became a lawyer / psychologist. He has his PsyD and JD. So he's over them. And of course, he's now a public defender in Brooklyn. So he has all this. He could be making oodles of millions, but he's doing the right thing. And but I was going to do that. But then I thought about the amount of school I'd have to go back through, and the idea of having to do that. And I got to checking around at different schools. Basically one day we were sitting at we were already married. So it was 2006. We were sitting at a restaurant having brunch with my parents. And this idea popped into Amanda's head about, like, I was talking about Shakespeare. And she was like, the way you talk about Shakespeare, I understand Shakespeare when you read it. The way your eyes come to life when you speak about it, it makes me want to read it. And I hate Shakespeare. And so I went in, and okay, she doesn't really hate Shakespeare, but anyway. I went in and I started thinking about teaching, and the idea of it was not. It was appealing, but it made me nervous. I remember the first summer after I'd left DePaul, I went back to my high school and I ran into my favorite teacher, who was not an English teacher, but my AP American History teacher, Dr. Micah. And he made a comment along the lines of, if the acting thing doesn't work, maybe teaching, you do have a presence in the classroom. And I said to him, Dr. Micah, I will never, ever, ever, never, ever, ever, never, ever feel again unless it's for my own child's parent-teacher conference. And fast forward 20-something years later, and here I am, happier than a pig in excrement, in doing just that. And to a certain extent, I'm still performing every single day.
100%. It requires so much energy to teach. You have to be really on. It's at high school you teach?
I teach 9th grade, yeah.
Wow.
And so when did you end up going to get your teaching degree?
So it was shortly thereafter, and I sort of, I applied to a bunch of schools, and one of the nice things that happened was not everyone was going to take it because I didn't have any education credits, and I didn't have a lot of English credits, but I had a ton of play reading, like the classes where we would go to, what was his name? Where we were sitting in that beautiful, it was that lecture hall in.
With the dean, the dean taught like a history.
Lieberman, white hair.
Yeah, we were just trying to remember his name earlier.
We couldn't remember.
It's an Irish name, but I don't remember.
I remember he and Andrew Finley were talking about, like, what's the difference between Catholicism and Episcopalianism, and it was this whole thing that they both loved to talk about. But I remember, like, that class got me credits for English for teaching, and some of the other classes that I would take, whether it was at NYU or at DePaul, got me all of these credits, and it was fantastic. So I was able to get my foot in the door at DePaul. I had to take a few extra. Not DePaul, at Brooklyn College. I was able to take some extra. I was on probation to start off because I didn't have any education classes. But they gave me all that stuff that I was in with undergraduates, and then finally I moved on. About 3 years later, I had my master's, and in the first couple of years of teaching, my first year of teaching was the most miserable year of my entire life. I had no support. I was actually teaching illegally. I was they hired me as a per diem sub, but I was teaching special ed.
Whoa!
And it was by myself, and it was really, and I was just beyond miserable. I didn't teach the same class twice. The kids ate me alive. I didn't know what I was doing, and it was just like I was going to quit. And then I decided, you know what, I'm going to give this one more shot. I found the school in the Bronx that was it was a failing school, but I got the job, and I found my connection with the kids. I found that I enjoyed to actually write lessons, that the idea of, suddenly I was not only an actor, but I was a writer. And if I didn't write it well, there is no better bullshit detector than a 14-year-old, 15-year-old kid. They know when you do not really have it. And I found my sea legs, and from there on in, it's been like I would say 99 out of 100 days, I am so happy to be in the classroom and see the kids. And like, even with this now, I'm seeing very few kids because a lot of we are going in, but it's not traditional teaching at the moment. But when I do get to see some of my former 9th graders, I get I made a joke. I had one student who, for 2 years, he's now in 11th grade. He's finally taller than I am. And I just gave him a ton of Tisch just because he was how dare he grow taller than I am.
Jonas, I have a question for you. When that first year, I'm so curious about this, when you were struggling so hardcore as a first year teacher, what kept you going?
I didn't have a choice. I felt like if I quit, then that would end my career. I had just gotten through, and I had gotten my master's. And what was the point of and I went to therapy, and I talked to somebody, and and it's funny. A couple of years later, my therapist laughed, and she's like, "That first year, I didn't think you were going to make it. I honestly, I didn't think you might have been right for you. You were so it was easily the worst year of my life, and hopefully stays the worst year of my life. But because the anxiety and the situational depression that I was going through, I mean, every day was just like, how do I get myself out of bed? How do I get myself to school? How do I do this? Because I feel like, and and then when one wonderful thing happened, and back in the day, you either got, when you were observed, because here again, I have to be, someone has to come and judge me, right? I mean, there's to say it's an assessment so that we learn to make you a better teacher. But to me, it's judgment, right? They're here to judge me, and you either get satisfactory or an unsatisfactory. And I got my first unsatisfactory, and it destroyed me for about 20 minutes. And then I realized I had to go back to teaching when I'd heard about it. And I realized, that was the worst that could happen. And we'll see what goes from there. And I ended up, getting through that year. I didn't stay at that school. I went to the school in the Bronx and figured it out, again on my own, but I didn't have the same conflicts. I was teaching the same class all week long. I didn't have 5 different classes that I had to, different things, right? It wasn't like now today I teach, in a normal year at my school now, I would teach 5 sections of 9th grade English. So every day, all 5 classes would get the same lesson. So I'd only have to write 1 lesson. I'd only have to grade 1 assignment. 132 kids, but still only 1. I wouldn't have to go from this assignment to that assignment to this assignment to that and deal with what class am I have right now? What am I supposed to be doing? And so I felt like I had to get through the year as much as I didn't want to. And what ended up happening was that summer, I decided, I'm going to give myself 1 more year to find 1 more job. And if the school if it doesn't work, and I got lucky because even though it was not the best of schools, I only stayed there for 2 years before I jumped ship to go to another school, which was a lot better. But the principal was a terror, but liked me. So I suddenly was like, okay, I can actually do what I need to do and not worry about.
You had a champion. You had a champion.
Right. So I was the guy who suddenly I was all right. I felt like I not that I could do no wrong, but at least I didn't have to worry about walking on eggshells or making sure that whomever I was speaking to, I didn't have to. I mean, I was very aware of what I was saying, and you never want. I'm always a little nervous about saying the wrong thing at the wrong time and it coming back, and but I still felt like once I had that, and I found me in the classroom, right? And my big thing is I teach with humor and I teach with love. And if I can't do that, then I'm not me. And so once I was able to be myself, and I'm still playing a role, right? I mean, I wear a tie every day when I go to school, when I teach, and it's my costume because then I am Mr. Abry, the teacher, as opposed to Mr. Abry, the dad, or Mr. Abry, or Jonas Abry, the dad, or Jonas Abry, the husband, or and so I get to play that role, and and so you have these moments where I go in and I'm the kids call me corny because I make tons of dad jokes, and I'll go into the classroom and I'll dab and then
That's cute.
And then I try badly on purpose to do the floss, and
oh no.
And the kids just look at me and they're just like, "Oh my god!" And
Yeah.
You know, and then I'll tell a dad joke, and they'll just be like, "Mr. Abry, please." Yeah.
Well, it's so interesting to me that you have spent so much time worried. I mean, it's not like I don't understand it. Of course, I understand it, but that you spent so much time worried about being judged, and then you mentioned this principal who loved you, because that was the experience of all of us at the theater school. We all loved you. You have always been so eminently likable, and I have this like burgeoning sort of thought about the somebody I know would call it the actor schmactor. So like the actor schmactor is real self-involved, really good at self-promotion,
Right.
which is something I think all three of us have struggled with. And there's like seemingly no conflict about it. It's like, yeah, I'm great. And, you know, like there's not a lot of, some of the more successful actors don't seem to have a lot of angst.
Mm.
I mean, they may feel insecure and they may feel worried about judgment, but they don't necessarily seem to feel, you know, wrought with with worries and concerns. And I almost to a person, if you go down the list of people that we went to school with, you know, the people who worried about these kinds of things, struggle with these kinds of things, are all people who ended up doing, if not completely something else, just a version of this theater or acting life that is not quite what we thought it was going to be when we started school. And anyway.
Yeah, I find that fascinating. It's so fascinating. The pivoting, those of us that struggled in the confidence, really, it's confident, but it goes beyond confidence. It's sort of, dare I say, it borders on blowhardedness, but that is celebrated, right? And those of us who are felt like a little people pleasy and like, what do I have to offer? You kind of get shit on. You kind of do, because people are like, oh, they're weak, or they need too much. So let's not promote them. Let's not build them up. And I think that's garbage.
Yeah, it is garbage.
I mean, I agree wholeheartedly. And I remember I went on a voiceover audition, and when I first got picked up by that agency, and I was feeling like 10 feet tall, right? I now was going to be going out and, you know, my life was about to change. I was about to become much richer and not have to worry about the restaurant job, and everything was going to be good. And I remember I walked into this commercial for, I want to say it was Pampers or I don't know what it was, but it was like, it was a voiceover of a baby, and they wanted someone who sounded older and rougher. And so I did my thing with I don't know if I made myself sound like Tom Waits or whatever, but I did something with my voice and whatever. And I felt good about it. And I was, and the casting agent said, okay, thank you. That was great. And I was like, cool, see you soon. And I walked out and I went, oh my God, why did I say that? That's not me. That's not, like, it was as if like, and I felt disgusted with myself because it felt phony, and it may have come off phony. I don't know, because it wasn't my natural reaction.
The right? See you soon part, like see you on set kind of a situation.
Like, you're gonna be seeing a lot of me, right? Yeah, I'm that good. I'm your guy.
Did you get the job?
Oh God, no.
Oh, that's funny.
So I don't think I ever went back to that agency, actually. So it's like I definitely did not make the greatest first impression with Running on Empty. So I was doing Coastal Disturbances at the time, and all of us, I mean, everybody in that show was getting auditions that they were coming out. Everybody was coming to, they wanted us. We were a hot ticket. And like super movie stars were coming to see us. Directors were coming to see us. People were like, okay. And obviously Annette was the one who flew off the charts and started working gangbusters. But for me, I got an audition. I guess Sidney Lumet came and saw it and wanted me for this film, but they were still working out the other characters. And they had hired, River was like the first person hired, and then Christine Lahti came later, and they wanted to hire me, but they didn't think that I looked enough like them. So they were sort of like, they kept bringing me back, and finally my mother called and said, or she had the agent call and say, don't keep bringing Jonas Abry back in if you're not going to offer it to him. And then we got a call that I didn't get it. And then I guess what ended up happening is they got Judd to play the dad, and they realized that I could be Judd's son, and that's when they were like, okay, we can bring Jonas in. And so that's how that worked. And it was a great experience, but it was just, things were a lot of fun. River was a great big brother. I'm an only child, and he treated me like a big brother, in good ways and in bad ways. He treated me no different than his littlest sister, Summer Joy, was there. And so I remember there was one point when Martha Plimpton and I were rehearsing over on, I want to say it's like 19th Street and Broadway. And I had someone would give me at Costal these water balloons that looked like grenades. And we were filling up water balloons and dropping them on people. And especially River wanted to make sure that we were dropping them on people wearing business suits. So we were just dropping these water balloons. And this was the life. I was having so much fun. And then we filmed it and things were good. And then we finished filming in Florida. And I don't remember like much of the actual filming. I didn't have as big a role. So they would tell me when I was there, but I wasn't going to school at the time. So it was on set most days. I just wasn't filming, and they had a tutor with me. So I would be there, and basically this tutor was like, you need to know the news. So she would like pull out the New York Times, and that's basically what we did. We would read the New York Times every day. One thing I also remember is it was right when Bad came out, and she was a huge Michael Jackson fan. So we would sit there and listen to it, and I was like, it's okay.
Jonas, he's not right.
Yeah, he's okay.
This Michael Jackson fellow.
Oh no, I was like huge. I mean, I was 8 when Thriller came out, and
so
Thriller Mania was just like.
Oh, but you weren't. It was Bad that you weren't so into.
Yeah,
you were into Thriller. Gotcha. You were a connoisseur, just not.
Yeah. Yes, I'm a connoisseur.
So, we asked this question, and I want to ask it of you: is if someone a kid, how about a kid in your classroom is like, I want to go to theater school. I want to go to, what would you say?
I who am I to ruin someone's dream? And who knows that things have changed. I mean, some of us who did not have the greatest theater school experiences may have gone back to theater school as a teacher or a professor and have learned and tried to change it, right? So you don't have the people who you might find as a pompous ass in the room who
a bully
who shit on the kids who aren't in the moment, and so I don't get many. I mean, one of the things about the school I'm at is it's what's called a CTE school, and so the kids there are learning architecture and engineering as well as English and math and social studies and science. So most of these kids have the plan to go into engineering, civil engineering, architecture, construction, but not doing the construction like construction management. And it's so a lot of these kids, every once in a while I get a kid who's an actor who's like, what was your experience like? And I was like, it was okay. It wasn't great. And but I also get kids who are immediately, because they don't know, right? They immediately go, because I tell them right away, I was an actor and I fell in love with teaching and I stopped being an actor. And every year there's always that one kid who's like, but you could be a millionaire right now. And I was like, but I'm not. And I wasn't, and I didn't enjoy it. And it's like when you go to bed at night, you want to put your head down and say, I'm happy. And then when you wake up in the morning, you want to say, I'm good where I'm going. And if you're sitting there worrying about, God, when's that next audition coming? Or when hey, am I going to be able to? I mean, right now, God, I think about the thing I'm doing for Costal Disturbances is for the Actors Fund. All these poor actors who are now, I think about actors who finally got that big break in a show, whether it's off Broadway or Broadway, or someone was going to come see it, and now suddenly, boom,
nothing.
And who knows when Broadway is going to reopen, and it's harder with television and movies, and they're doing stuff a little bit now, but you still can't do the real stuff. You can't. So it's it's sad. And
yeah, it is sad.
It is sad.
When you were talking about going to the city with your mom from Westchester and having an audition and getting your pretzel, so my son he likes to act, and so we do a fair amount of that. He started doing it when he was like 5 or 6, so he went for a bunch of commercials. And he's 14 now. He told me recently, I thought that the auditions were the jobs. So he never knew this whole concept of you get it or you don't get it.
Right.
Because I guess I didn't talk to him about it. And so once he learned, which wasn't until he had stopped doing it first time around, once he learned that it was this competition that he didn't get 95 times, he was like, oh, well, that's terrible.
And I think I was the same way. I remember going on my first audition, and I walked out of there. I'm like, what now? And my mom was like, we're going to another audition. I was like, okay. And I didn't. And, and then I finally got my first commercial, which was a 7-Eleven commercial. And like, I remember there was a girl in there with me who was maybe a couple of years older. I was 8 when I started doing this. And so she was maybe 11 or 10 or 11. And she had already done something like 73 commercials. And
wow.
And she was raking it in, and I was like, what do you do with all that money? And she's like, my parents say it's for college. And so it was this thing, though. And I remember I was under these hot lights, and I was supposed to be drinking the Slurpee, and it was made of styrofoam, so it wouldn't melt under the hot lights. And they kept having me walk with the Slurpee with it. And I was like, I'm dying, and they had to pat me down because I was sweating profusely. And it was and then they finally aired the commercial, and you could only see like the back of my head. And I was just like, But
Yeah.
But it paid a bunch, I bet.
What was that?
I bet it paid a lot, even though you didn't.
I think some of my college got paid off from it. I don't know how much, but and I remember thinking, and this is when I knew that I was kind of done with it. I heard a story about the guy who back in the day was doing promos for HBO. So he would every 2 or 3 weeks go into the studio, and he would be like, next on HBO, tonight on HBO. And then he would just name the movie and the stars, like John Travolta and Uma Thurman in Pulp Fiction next on HBO. And he was making like $2 million a year.
Wow.
Because he was the voice of HBO. And I began to think to myself, oh my God, that would be the cush gig. I'm like, but that's money. And it's not what I want to do. It's not, I want to act. I want to be, and it became this the fun part, and even the fun part when I helped start an off Broadway theater company, and we were doing shows, and I was doing it, but it wasn't getting my career anywhere, and I was not having fun because I needed it. It wasn't about the process anymore. It was about the end. How is this going to take my career to the next? With teaching, it's always about the process. Where can I get the kid to the next step? Right? We don't give grades based on, I do based on a rubric, but we're looking at each kid and we're going, okay, where is this kid right now? And where does this kid need to be? And that's where we're working with each student. And that's the process. And at the end, the goal is that when they get to the next grade, that next teacher can say, okay, where are they now? And how can I get them to this spot? And there is a goal in sight, right? I do have a curriculum map that has, this is where I want these kids to be with their end result. I want them to write a 5-paragraph essay using 2 different pieces of evidence to back up each claim in each paragraph. And, so that's where I want them to be at the end of the year. But how do I get them there? And what's it going to take for me to get Joey from
each kid, right
here, as opposed to Talia from here to there? So you have all of these different, and it becomes this wonderful practice of letting these kids know how much you care and how much you love them, because you love them, even the ones that drive you batshit crazy. You think back on them and you go, God, that kid was batshit crazy.
I wish I had you as a teacher. I'm just thinking, I just think that you're probably so phenomenal in the classroom, and I would love to watch that one day. So I'm going to pop in. Do you Zoom for kids at home? I'm going to Zoom bomb you and watch.
Okay,
but
there you go.
I mean, oh, wow.
I will say, just on your note about process, I mean, I get what you're talking about. I do think it is still very process oriented in theater.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Because there's no stakes, like nobody's making any money, so we might as well do what we like and have fun. But yeah, everything that's not that, and that was a big surprise for me about the theater school, is that by the last year we weren't talking about theater anymore. We were only talking about film and TV, and I that really surprised me. Everybody else seemed to see it coming, but it really surprised me, and it was the least fun part of my whole 4 years there.
I mean, I look back on DePaul and I think about the good times. I think about Apartment 3. I think about just sitting on the veranda with Eric and Dan and Cassie and Heather and just like and eventually Bridget, and just like relaxing and smoking a lot of cigarettes, having rent parties that we did. And the funny thing is that I don't think a lot about the education. I think about that class. I think about some of the actual classes that I took, but the actual academic classes. I remember the one that that everybody was telling me to don't do well because I was the curve. Was the history teacher, and so there was incredibly hard multiple choice questions and all this stuff, and I just remember that. I remember that. I remember a little of Rick. I remember a little of John Jenkins, Jim.
Yeah.
John Jenkins. Mm-hmm.
I remember he and I had a blowout at one point that, and I'm pretty sure that's one of the reasons why, because I kind of told him that because it was scene study, and I actually said something along the lines of, when are we actually going to do scene study? Because we were just, I feel like that was probably the beginning of my end, because it was, you mentioned that I was the moral high ground. I think I went a little too far on that one, but
I remember being in awe. I think I was in that class, and I remember being like, Jonas is a badass.
Right.
And that's not always rewarded, right? You were a rebel. I mean, at the theater school or other institutions like that.
It is I am rarely, I mean, yes, if I feel something, I'll say it, but I'm especially to a figure of authority. It's just not my way. I think I just broke. We were doing, what's the one with the guy from Mr. Robot who wrote, Michael Christopher, the Shadowbox, Answer.
Yep.
And I think he made a comment, and I was like, aren't we supposed to be like breaking down the lines and doing this stuff? Why are we just going up there and saying them? Why we need to learn the beats? How do we, what am I supposed to do? Because that's how I had been taught acting when I was actually acting. What is your beat? What is your moment in this moment? Right? You can't have the same moment twice. You have to have a different moment every moment. And so he wasn't saying that. And, and I think I just sort of cracked after one day, and who knows, but,
well, I think it all worked out in the way that it was supposed to.
Oh yeah. That's the thing, is that I did survive theater school and I thrived. And that's, isn't that really the goal? Is not to survive, it's to thrive.
Yes. If we are lucky.
Amen.
Thank you.
That's a great note to end on, Jonas.
I Survived Theater School is an Undeniable Inc. production. Jen Bosworth Ramirez and Gina Polici are the co-hosts. This episode was produced, edited, and sound mixed by Gina Polici. Follow us on Instagram at Undeniable Writers, or on Twitter at Undeniable WRIT1. That's Undeniable Right without the E1. Thanks.